as always, Microsoft had it all to prove, and it had to be excellent quality games that we saw, and that is exactly what we got. It kind of ended with the reveal for the first time of the new Indiana Jones game by Machine Games, executive produced by Todd Howard himself. And let's talk about that one to begin with, because I guess it aligns most closely with what we tend to discuss. Alex, I'm going to go to you first on this one, but I think overall, I mean, my first impressions on this one were it just looked tremendous. Excellent choice of engine technology, obviously, id Tech there. It just looked really sumptuous and inexpensive, really, as a game. It just looked astonishingly good.
It did. It was very, very well done on a lot of aspects. I also think one thing that the movies, the last two, have not really captured is like, just kind of being, it looked simple. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it was like an Indiana Jones, like, story. Just, he doesn't need to be dealing with aliens. He doesn't need to be time traveling. It's just,
but come on. People were way too hard. That last movie was kind of fun.
I mean, if you like CGI. I didn't even
make it through, I'll be honest with you. I turned it off.
I could not do that.
I like CGI, but...
I mean, I like CGI as much as the next person when I don't see it so visibly. But either way...
CGI monkeys, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, do you like the CGI monkeys, John?
No, okay, that movie I don't like very much. The alien, yeah. Crystal Skull, no.
Crystal Skull. But yeah, that for that aspect, I was very, very happy with it. It's just like, and I think the choice of studio for it is very good. Obviously, with the Wolfenstein games, they have established that they know how to do the time period correctly. They know how to capture moods and things like that in a really good way. I think the funny thing in the aftermath of it all is they immediately, when they started talking about it, they didn't say like, you're not playing as Indiana Jones. You are Indiana Jones. And they really wanted to emphasize that it was going to be a first-person experience, with them dialing the camera back a little bit when you do, I guess, some of them. It's hard to get a sense of how much platforming the game is actually going to have based on the video, and as well for cutscenes, because watching Indiana Jones and Harrison Ford's character model there is part of the experience. But I did think that was great for the studio to do, because being first person, it's something that the studio's done ever since they were originally Starbreeze, and then kind of transferred into what Machine Games was. And that's what they're comfortable with. That's how they make their games. They know how to make them that way. And, in a genre of action adventure games, which I think this Indiana Jones game is going to be, with some puzzles. It seems like they did actually talk a lot about the puzzles. I think it's going to be unique in the genre as a result of that. And we've already played games like Tomb Raider before, or Uncharted, and we know what those are like. So seeing them do it from a different perspective here without that baggage, I'm very happy about it. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so 100% on board. So as you say, Machine Games is largely formed by many people that had previously worked for Starbreeze, though obviously they've expanded and changed since then. But the director on this game, I believe, was the director on the Riddick game, the original, and The Darkness, both of which are excellent. And you absolutely can see the influence here in this footage, specifically the moment that there's two things that really stood out. First of all, the hand-to-hand melee combat, plus, of course, the whip. That's extremely Riddick in a way that's... It had that sort of impact where they really nailed that first-person brawling mechanic. But also, when they specifically highlighted, and we cut to third person for certain actions, such as climbing, you guys remember, of course, that's
Yes.
exactly how it works in Riddick, where they would cut out the third person for specific actions like that. So to me, in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, this is actually like a spiritual follow-up to that game, which we've not seen games quite like that in a while. And that Riddick also being sort of a film property, right? So the combination of all of this together, this feels like that's what they're making. And I think that's great. This sort of first-person-y adventure action game that's not explicitly a shooter. I'm sure there will be some shooting in this game, but it's clearly not the focus. And I think the whip stuff looks awesome in first person. And I'll be curious to see how it actually plays out. But yeah, there's the melee stuff. There's the puzzle solving. Actually, the melee, some things about the melee that also stood out is like they have moments where he'll actually grab an enemy and like grabbing them in first person, almost kind of, I almost wonder if it'll have some sort of Doom style influence, you know, with the, what are they called? The
glory
brutal-
kills.
the glory kills, right? Where you kind of like can trigger an equivalent in this game, grab a guy by the collar and then like wail on him and then throw him back into the scene. Like there's a lot of potential for that kind of cool interactivity there. And beyond that, of course, you know, so visually, I think it looks generally quite good. I saw some complaints around the character models, and I can kind of see the issue there. I think the character models are good, but not like, they're not at the level of some other big AAA games, right? And that's, I don't think that's a big problem, but
I think it's mainly like the indie character model and a little bit of the eyes. Like there is definitely a lack of subsurface scattering based upon whatever they're doing with their lighting. I think mainly it's actually a lighting setup issue and not an asset issue.
Sure. I mean, I think some of the faces look a little weird in terms of the way they're designed, but
I think that's mainly indie though.
Yeah, you're right. That actually might just be an uncanny valley. I could call it uncali for short.
Sure,
actually.
do it.
Uncanny valley kind of thing, where we're used to seeing what Harrison Ford in Indy looks like, and since they're going for his likeness, any differentiation stands out as being strange. So you're probably right about that. But I think it's mostly a lighting issue. Whereas the rest of the scene, I think, looks phenomenal.
This is the first indie game that actually has his likeness, isn't it? In game.
I mean,
game.
I would say that they've tried to have his likeness in the past. I mean, you go back to N64 PC, right, in the 90s, with that third-person Tomb Raider-like game that they made. Blanking on the name.
The Infernal Machine?
Yeah, it's the Infernal Machine. I mean, he was clearly designed to look like Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, but the technology was, of course, limited. And then there was also the Xbox game, which I did a video on some years back, which was really cool. And I think in all cases they were trying to go for that look, but the technology wasn't there, right?
But so one thing actually, so even though I think the model and some of the animation quality for the Indiana Jones character model is a bit off-putting because of the fact that we're so, like John said, I know these movies by heart. Like I know exactly the way Harrison Ford looks. And so seeing it looking slightly different and then moving in a more animatronic way, it is off-putting to say the least. But there are some things like that I thought in the initial, when I don't know what the big baddie's name is. I forget his name all of a sudden. But there are some really cool things in terms of animation detail that are really great on the main character. Like when he's like looking down at Indy's like head buried in the desert, you can see there's like moisture collecting on his nose and it drops off multiple times. Also, when he is opening his mouth, sorry, Oliver, we're gonna have to do this. You can see the spittle between his lips going like stretching, going up and down. It's really, really cool. Like little, and then when he exasperates and says like the word forgotten, also a bunch of spit comes out. So they are spending a lot of time and attention to detail there, I think, for like the custom character models that are more, I would say, like either unknown actors and actresses that we are not used to seeing, and there you don't see some of the uncanny effects more. It's just right. I think it really is some of that lighting setup, which is giving everyone like a very specular sheen on their skin. I would imagine there is probably actual subsurface scattering there, but it's maybe being buried by the lighting setup. And then I think it's just in Harrison Ford himself. That's, I don't know how you do it without spilling millions of dollars into this and doing something absolutely no one's ever seen before.
Like this. But I would also say that it's going for that sort of like hyper realism look where it's not exactly targeting photorealism, right? It's clearly a stylistic looking game. And so it does have a little bit of that going on, which I think is probably the right choice for this. Especially if you're trying to pull off a likeness like that. If you make him a little more stylized, perhaps it stands out less. But yeah, either way, that's a minor thing in the grand scheme of things. And the rest of this looks great. And being id Tech, that also means I think we can safely assume that the console versions will also be 60 frames per second.
I hope so. Yeah.
Like I can't imagine them building a game in this engine and not targeting that, right? That would be. I mean, even remind me. I mean, like Wolfenstein 2 and everything. I believe all of those games were aiming for 60, even on older machines. So
I think I think it was only the id Tech 5 Wolf game that was like unlocked 60, like it was like in the 40s on like there was a PS3 Xbox 360 version of that, wasn't there?
Oh yeah.
I don't think that was a capped 30 game though. I don't recall.
I think the only older id Tech game that ran really badly was The Evil Within.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It was a gosh darn mess, but
that's such a
everything
weird
else,
game.
I love that game, but technically it's very poor.
I've got a few notes based on what I saw, and but overall I just thought it looked absolutely fantastic. I was really intrigued by their ideas that confrontations may actually have different ways through. You don't necessarily need combat. I mean, if you watch the Indiana Jones movies, combat is kind of like last resort almost. You know, the guy uses his head to get through these situations more, and his guile much more than his fists generally. I thought that was they highlighted that, and I was really quite excited by that to see how it's actually going to work out. The puzzle solving side of things. I mean, there are a lot of sort of callbacks, echoes to the classic Indiana Jones movies, you know, the Staff of Ra, that kind of thing. That's the sort of puzzling I'd really like to see. And it's kind of the sort of thing that Uncharted and whatnot have tried to do over the years. From a lore perspective, it made me laugh that, well, first of all, they had the logos of the various movies come up. It started off with Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which annoyed me a bit because that's kind of like the latter-day name of the movie.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. But then they did Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, but then it stops there. You didn't get the logos for Crystal Skull and was it the Dial of Destiny? Just like, yeah, okay, this is...
And no mention of young Indiana Jones, jeez.
This is the thing, right? This is what I find really exciting about it, is that, you know, they've placed it in the timeline between Raiders and Last Crusade. And this is a luxury that the movies don't have because they have to accommodate an older Harrison Ford. In, you know, if they're going to do a new movie, they can just place it square within the classic era. You know, India is high at its prime. And that's what really excites me about this. And you've got the globe-trotting, and you've got the scrolling map with the red line.
The most important thing.
Which is
at 60 frames per second, no less.
Yeah, crucial to Indiana Jones lore. So they get it, right? That's what really excites me about this. They get it, and they get the wisecracking. You know, shame you couldn't have Harrison Ford, but Troy Baker's doing a pretty good job with his stylings. Yeah. So, you know,
I think having Harrison Ford probably would have been a mistake, given that
he sounds older.
He sounds older, and also bringing Hollywood actors in, unless they're seriously familiar with like the way voice acting for games can work, I feel like they might get frustrated, and you may not get the performance you want out of it.
Part time.
Yeah, or the old Kiefer Sutherland problem, where it's like, you know, Solid Snake, or sorry, I guess it was Big Boss.
Oh my
became
gosh.
basically a mute in The Phantom Pain.
Kept you waiting. You didn't. Yeah, that was never a good one. I agree. I think, yeah, like Rich said, I'm actually super excited for this game. I like the previous studio's work. I'm a little bit less fan of TNC, the new Colossus, for a number of reasons, but I hope they, like, balancing the encounters is actually one of the hardest things, and Rich talked about like that, like where you don't want to force the player character to do too many things because you want some versatility in these encounters to actually be indie, not just punching and shooting Nazis all day, but moving around stealthily and silently, where he's not a one-man army. So I'm very curious to see how they're going to balance that. Also, the size of the areas. There was like, they showed an area, I think it was in Egypt, where they showed like guard dogs walking around at one point. I'm very curious about the actual size of like the areas you are walking through. Or if it's more like, I don't know, like the areas of like Tomb Raider and Uncharted, where like those are like kind of like small little areas when the enemies come up. Like they're a little bit more freeform when you're platforming and puzzling, but then when the areas where the enemies coming up, you can see like the chest high walls starting to like appear and things like that. So I'm just very curious to see how they're going to design this all.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping for this sort of wide linear approach that I'm so fond of, where it's still a linear game, but parts of the level are rather open-ended and designed to allow experimentation, playfulness. That's kind of the whole design of Crysis, which we often talk about, where that's not an open world game. It is effectively a wide linear experience, and it sort of rewards varied styles of play. And I don't expect it to be that vast, but based on what they're saying here and their history of doing varied gameplay design, I think we should see something like that. So
I only have one criticism at this point, and maybe it's minor and maybe it's nothing, but you know, the Skywalker sound, Indiana Jones punching sound effect, it didn't seem to be the one that was in the game. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh yeah, I know that one.
Yeah. But that is like also pretty crucial part of the Indiana Jones experience.
Yeah,
but that
really
is literally
so
all I could. I mean, this was the most exciting game reveal I can remember for a long time. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, because they did. I feel like we knew about its existence, but when they revealed it for the first time, they just came out full on with this showcase, and gives you a lot of information on it and kind of gets you excited. And this is exactly the type of game that, let's be honest, we haven't really seen Xbox focus on for a long time. This is something that we've been wanting and asking for, and I'm really happy that they're finally.
What would be the last one?
Something
like when they licensed in Rise of the Tomb Raider, perhaps? Cause,
I mean, because Halo's not. Halo used to be a big single player thing, but Infinite didn't really. It didn't pull that all the way off. You know, a lot of the other stuff, it's either multiplayer centric, a very different style of game, or something else entirely.
Like, obviously Starfield is a single player game, but it's also like a big open world.
It's a Bethesda game.
It's a Bethesda game. It's not this. You know,
that's not to say there's anything wrong with those. It's great to have that kind of stuff, but I feel like this is the type of experience that Xbox has been missing in their wheelhouse, and they used to deliver on this big time in the past, but now I'm happy that they have at least actually multiple, I guess, kind of in the works.
Yeah, some technical things I noted. There doesn't appear to be the last game they made was the Youngblood. Was it? Wolfenstein?
Was Youngblood entirely them, or was
that's also with Arcane a bit? It was co-developed, but that had RT reflections in it. It was like semi NVIDIA sponsored. I know NVIDIA engineers were on site. But there's a scene in the trailer. I've got these notes. Sorry, here at where is it? 056, where the one woman is talking with Indy. I don't know his counterpart, who I'm excited to meet. There's a mirror, I believe, behind them. It might be a mirror. It looked like a mirror, polished mirror or something like that. No RT reflections on that. So maybe the game doesn't have RT in this first showing. Maybe it will later.
That would be a bummer, though, because aside from Youngblood, id Tech 7 itself has excellent and very fast ray tracing capabilities that we saw in Doom Eternal, right? And that ran beautifully on consoles as well. So
yeah, so I guess we'll see. Obviously, there's probably a lot more going on here than at Eternal, I think, visually. So maybe they did have to make some sort of, or maybe it's just not ready for the trailer. And also, there's a shot at, excuse me, I'm trying to find where I read it, 053. So it's right before that. So 53 seconds into the trailer, not the direct thing, where there are some obvious shadow maps. So on the table, like undersampled, things lacking pixel perfect shadows. So no good evidence of any ray tracing at all. In fact, I would be surprised if they were doing any sort of ray trace lighting, at least in this trailer. It looked a lot like their old approach, which was light maps plus direct shadows. So very excited, though, still, even regardless. 60 FPS, first person, Indiana Jones. This sounds awesome.
Hey, they picked their target for what they want to do visually, and they're going for it, and they're doing so with a high performance target as well. So I feel like that's enough. Not everything needs to push the boundaries, and I think this looks really good with a lot of traditional techniques. So I'm happy.